Welcome back for another session of all the latest news on things wheeled in KwaZulu-Natal, the province where we've been motoring since 1904. I, Alwyn, and Neo will be discussing all the latest things, poking holes in the continued fallout for the Competition Commission, warning drivers how quickly they can lose their points on auto, and I want to know from you, why are we not scootering in South Africa? Let's go for it. Welcome back to another Wheels session where we tell you all the latest things on wheels in KwaZulu-Natal, the province where the witness have been motoring since 1904. Did you know that? We were actually the very first people to drive in an old Spider on the vast and long journey to the east from Pietermaritzburg to Durban. Took all day back then. Now, of course, it's a lot quicker. Today, we're going to poke holes in the continued fallout from the Competition Commission's draft guidelines to make the monopolistic business of selling and fixing vehicles more competitive. We're going to warn you drivers out there how quickly you will be able to lose your license or have it suspended when this new administrative adjudication of road traffic offences, the so-called ARTO, starts later in the year. And I ask, why do we South Africans, we South Africans, not scooter? If you go anywhere north of the Zambezi River, you'll see thousands of people on every street block scootering. And often those scooters carry up to 3 people, sometimes more. But why don't we scooter? It's such an obvious solution to our street and gridlock problems. But first, I want to give some shout-outs to Uncle Percy and South Africa's racers.
Who is Uncle Percy?
That's a good question, you. Uncle Percy is one of those unsung heroes in the motor trade. 42 years now he's been selling parts at first Kempston Motors, who used to do the GM vehicles, and the last few decades at Key Delta, which basically sells Isuzus and these days Citroën and Opel and all the French brands when it comes to that. I can tell you that from tomorrow, when Uncle Percy retires at Key Delta, the mechanics will be wondering who's going to make up those bags that they have to get to service the vehicles. I went there yesterday to ask Uncle Percy what is his one-sentence advice for new motorists. And in 2 words, he said it's fresh oil. Uncle Percy told me that your car needs oil like your body needs blood. And to ensure that those oils from your transmission right through to your engine is clean is the cheapest and most effective way to ensure that your car lasts you a long time.
Uncle Percy is retiring in interesting times.
Yes.
With on one hand the Competition Commission saying car owners must be able to service their cars and buy parts at prices determined by an open market, and on the other hand, electric drivetrains that do not use any of those parts. Break it down for us, the non-car nuts, like myself.
Non-car nuts. I suspect all of us are non-car nuts when it comes to paying for those parts. Let's go back to that Competition Commission statement you made where they want us to buy parts in a free market. My sympathies, like we discussed last week, is not with the original equipment manufacturers. For as soon as your car is out of the warranty and you start buying generic parts, you will discover how much they are price gouging us. But that said, the National Automobile Dealers Association, or NADA, which doesn't mean nothing in this case, challenged us being the media, to bring proof of this price gouging, and they argue that they have the right to determine the standards of those that service their products. And I quote, in much the same way that Airbus and other aircraft original equipment manufacturers do with aircraft and the strict maintenance thereof. Now, dear NADA, speaking as a motoring journalist here, for the proof of this price gouging that we have been suffering the last few decades, just compare the difference in price for an oil filter or a fan belt, which are made by the same standards and in the same factory. But the difference in price comes when there's a sticker on the box that says BMW or Mercedes or VW versus Midas or Auto Parts. As soon as you start comparing these prices, you will realize that we are being gouged through the neck, if we can adapt some Afrikaans here. And as for the safety standards, which NADA implies that we will be losing if we have anybody fixing our vehicles, there are many 1980s hatchbacks and bakkies still driving on our roads. We keep a car on average 15 years. None of these cars are in warranty, and all of them use generic parts that we can buy off shelf and that the pavement mechanics fix to keep these Corocoros of ours on the road at prices that we, the public, can afford. I think that the dealers will have a much higher moral ground or much more reason to crow about safety if they start selling us cars that cannot break the speed limit. If you want us to be safe and you say that speed kills, why sell a vehicle that can easily do 200 or 300 kilometers an hour when these cars are going to be driven around in a 60 kilometer zone for most of their lives? Which brings me neatly to the ARTO. I said that I want to warn motorists that they can very quickly have their licenses suspended when ARTO comes in. As soon as you transgress a speed limit by about 30 kilometers an hour, you face severe penalties. And if you drive up to the Joburg or down from Joburg to Durban on N3, you will go through at least 4 areas where the speed limit is 80 kilometers an hour or lower. A professional driver, like a courier driver or any of the van drivers who can average a speed of about 110 going up and down the highway, or not go faster than 110 but get close to that speed, will very easily get all those hidden cameras flashing when he goes through that 80 kilometer an hour zone. And in the process, on one journey in one day, he can, or she in this case, can lose his or her license. And that goes for all the motorists out there. It's so easy to do 90 kilometers an hour in these new cars in a 60 kilometer zone, and right there you face 6 demerit points on your license. Do it coming back, let's say you're in a rush to go and get your kid at school or something, I've got 12 points missing on your auto license. One more point and your license is suspended. These are the things that we need to prepare for auto is coming, and in a sense we do need to make our drivers a lot more aware of driving safely, but to be aware that it's very easily to garner a lot of demerit points that will have your license suspended.
You mentioned scooters in Africa. Are these the boda bodas we see in Uganda and Egypt?
You've seen those bodas. Most amazing to me is some of them are like the Flintstone bikes, where you just get 2 huge tree trunks with roughly hewn wooden wheels that these young ladies propel with one leg like a giant scooter, and they load it heavily. There's like 80 kilogram bags on those wooden bodas. But yes, it is only in Kenya they don't call them bodas, they call them pickies for pick-me-ups. And it's interesting, a company that has been based in Dubai, and it's going to sound a lot like the Gupta brothers here, because it are 2 brothers, Sanjay and Rishi Kohlis, who have adopted a brilliant scheme from Taiwan, the Go-Go-Ros, which doesn't mean that it's Go-Go's riding, but it's electric scooters. And the Go-Go-Ro guys realized that they're not selling electric scooters. What they're actually selling you is a full battery. And so they designed a whole system where you can have battery banks, much like we have fuel stations. And in these battery banks, your scooter will tell you, I'm close to low, the closest battery bank is 2 blocks down, go there, change the batteries and go on again. And this takes about 2 minutes from start to finish. The same system has been adapted for Kenya, where they are using normal motorbikes with electric drivetrains. It's a very tiny motor, a 1.5 kilowatt motor that gives you a range of about 100 kilometers. But it's you don't have to worry that when your range is over, you'll have to wait 8 hours to recharge your lithium-ion battery, as is typically the case. You just swap the empty battery for a full one, and away you go. And these pickies, as they call them in Kenya, these motorbikes, are very popular as Uber ride hailers. There are huge systems already where people hail a bike. Ironically, in Nigeria, these bikes are being banned. Same in Vietnam, because of the huge air pollution problems that they bring with, and also the riders swarm all over the traffic. So it's no rules traffic. And Nigeria is trying to, in Lagos specifically, keep some order on their roads. Vietnam just wants to get rid of all that damp from the dirty fuel that they use. But I see that these electric bikes are going to come south to South Africa at some point. But meanwhile, for some reason, we are not riding on scooters. And I wonder why is that? I mean, if we race everywhere else.
You mentioned SA races. Who won what, where?
Oh, this last week was a good one. In KwaZulu-Natal, we've got 2, what I would like to call hero racers, Guy Botterill and his navigator, Simon Vale Lacey. And they went up all the way to the Rally Côte d'Ivoire, or the Bandama, as we call it, which is up there in Gabon, where they only parlez-vous français. Only problem is when they got to the race destination, their Etios, which is over R1 million worth of pure race-bred car, was still stuck in a container in a harbour. So they hurriedly borrowed an old Mitsubishi Evo, and guess what? Our KZN boykies went and set the fastest times in a borrowed vehicle, getting some valuable points towards their FICA race laps, or the FIA African Rally Championship. But yeah, here we sit, typical situation in Africa. You want to race, you don't want to pay bribes, and what happens is your vehicle just gets stuck in harbour. We do hope that they're going to get their huge investment back, which is no container, And as these things work, that container now have to go to the empty raceway and then come back all the way. It can't just be rerouted, what with cars being stolen that way all over Africa. So those were the guys, Guy and his navigator Simon, who I just want to give a big shout out for achieving so well up in Gabon. In Spain, Johannesburg kart racer, a youngster by the name of Agil Alibai, he had a baptism of fire. He only came 21st overall in his European Rotax Junior Max Winter Cup karting debut, which happened at the Campillos on Spain's Costa del Sol, which is a beautiful place to do any racing. It was a hard-fought weekend, and young Alibai suffered a few no-score penalties that cost him dear through the weekend. But I think we can give a shout-out for this Joburg youngster who went and ended just outside the top 20 in the world up there in Spain.
Alvain, I can reveal to the listeners you're off to a cannabis conference next week. But do tell the listeners how weed fits into vehicles.
Oh, this goes back a long way, Neil. Ferdinand Diesel was the first to make diesel, hence we still call that amber liquid after his name. But he used peanuts that he cold-pressed into an oil, which doesn't burn that well, as thick oils tend to do. So he had to cut it with ethanol, which he got from maize leaves, just make it rot. And instead of turning it into some kind of rough, crude alcohol, he turned it into an alcohol that would make his diesel burn a bit better, or his peanut oil burn a bit better. Now, cannabis seeds contain a lot more oil than peanuts do, and cannabis also grows almost as quick as the modern maize does, except maize cannot be planted except by human interference. That's why David Attenborough could say that if you look to Earth from Mars, you'd wonder who are the bosses here. Is it maize who get the humans to scurry like ants to plant it and store it and feed it? Or is it the humans who actually control the maize? The bottom line is weed grows like, well, weed. And this cannabis stalks and stems provide a lot of raw biomaterials that we can ferment into methanols and from there turn into biofuel to power our vehicles with. And with this hat, and I'm going to this cannabis conference in Joburg to see how we can help shape an industry where our gogos can grow a lot of weed and bring these bundles to the local co-op to be weighed and sold into the methanol system, so that we as South Africa can stop paying the billions that we do at the moment to Angola, to Somaliland and to Nigeria and to the SAE for our diesels, and instead grow our own diesel. It's a big dream, and hopefully we'll get there.
Thank you, Alvain.
This is us. Till next week.
Thank you for allowing Alvain to tune you straight on your car issues. We encourage our listeners to frequently ask questions on our Witness Facebook and Twitter timeline with the hashtag AskAlvain. That is capital A-S-K, capital A-L-W-Y-N. Psst. And guess what? There are giveaways. Sometimes.